So, as I'm learning about the NRF at its core fundamental principles, it's making me think like when I decided that I wanted to be a mom, which was well before I was engaged, married, it doesn't have to, I knew this when I was a kid, is what my point was, is that I didn't have the words for it, but I wanted to parent differently than what my experience was with my mom, which was not really, she was not a present mom. I'm a kid of the 80s. Apparently that's a thing, right?
It
So,
is.
latchkey kids, right? Like I made that choice consciously, unconsciously, that I was going to be an active parent. That's the terminology I'm using. But a lot of people don't do that, right? They want to have a family and don't necessarily put in the time to be, my word, an active parent, like really involved and engaged and aware on the minutia. And it seems to me that the NRF requires that, right? Like you have to really want,
A lot of minutia.
huh?
Yeah, it's a lot
Well,
of minutia.
yeah, but like, so that's interesting because there are time constraints to being an active parent. And there's resources, that come into being an active parent. If you have 4 kids, it's hard to be an active parent
Yes.
to all of their individual needs.
But I
And
think one thing before you keep talking, I just want to insert
yeah.
that research shows that you really only need to meet a child's needs about 30% of the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh my
everything I
God,
teach,
I
I'm
can let
like,
myself off the hook.
totally.
Oh, sorry, he's 70% there. I'm just gonna let it go.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
For secure attachment, researcher at Tronic says 30% of the time is how much of the time a child with secure attachment gets their needs met.
Wow. So I also probably owe my mom an apology because I probably got my 30%, but just wanted more.
Well, then, right. And look how great you turned out, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Oh, it's been a long road of self-awareness to get here. Okay, well, that kind of answers my question, which is like, I would imagine some people hear the science and hear the tools and hear the things and go,
yes,
that's a
that-
lot.
that's too much, right?
That's going to take a lot. Like,
Right,
I don't have the bandwidth for that.
right,
And it
right.
doesn't make them bad parents. It's just like,
Makes them normal parents.
yeah, in this day and age,
Hmm.
right? Where there's no village and we're all living by ourselves.
That's right.
Okay, well, that 30% there, man, that is good to know. Okay, that kind of, there we have it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's actually really, that gives a lot of lightness to it.
Hmm.
And that's, I guess, part of the whole resilience, right? Kids at this age,
Exactly.
right? Their brains are so plastic and that even if they're only getting 30%, like there's so much
Yes.
in there that the things are coming together to
If
help them.
we meet a child's needs all of the time and they don't get stress, they don't build any resilience. So yes, just like you said, it is about resilience. They need stress in order to build character, to learn how to meet their own needs, to build stress tolerance.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. And that goes to the tree and the roots and the whole thing about NRF is like you have to have the fundamentals. So when the stressors of the wind or the drought or all these
Mhm.
things come at you, you know how to stay
Yep,
within your,
that's right. That's right. That's good analogy.
okay,
So much to that tree analogy.
right?
The tree
Yeah.
metaphor.
Well, it's also so, it's just so common sense. It's just so like, yeah, you got to learn how to fight off the things that are going to attack you. We're animals. Like, there are always going to be things coming at us.
Right. Right. And
Always.
that's right. We only can learn by having that stress.
Yeah. And that all goes to, what you're teaching and what we're coaching is that we want the kids, we want the families, we want the collaborative work of them coming up with the
Yeah,
solution.
that's right. So you were a latchkey kid, and that's how the in general, Generation X was raised. But then when we grew up, we became the helicopter parents and grew kids who don't have that kind of resilience.
Mm.
There was micromanaging. It was like a big pendulum swing. And so the complaints in the workplace of millennials and Gen Zs is that they are not resourceful and that they can't handle, problems. They can't handle stress. They quit at the drop of a hat.
Mm.
They don't want to do anything.
Poor work ethic, all
They
of
don't have
that, because
rigor. Mm-hmm.
it's too hard.
Yeah. Are you seeing that? Or do you notice that?
I noticed that when so I coached college lacrosse, and I noticed that it was a club sport, but I still had some very competitive kids on there. I mean
Mm-hmm.
but I noticed that when I coached high school lacrosse, that the girls did not want to work hard. They were like, what's it matter? What are you gonna do? And then I did have an experience with the college team where I had taken on one of the young girls to work with me as I was trying to start my energy bar business. And she was supposed to just do like some random, just some social media posts like on Instagram when it was just in its infancy, like would have taken 2 minutes. And she said, well, just very entitled. She was like, well, I think if I'm going to do this work, I should be like a partner in your business.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I don't, yeah, there was just like this, there was this air of like, well, if I do the minimum amount,
Mm-hmm.
that I deserve accolades and I
Mm-hmm.
deserve more. And anyway, I mean, that's not really exactly what you're talking about, but I have seen, yes, I mean,
Yeah.
I have seen that, you know, do it for me. And
This sounds really down on millennials. And there's another side to them that must be said. I think millennials are going to change the world. They say no to bosses that treat them as though they're commodities. They say no to careers that suck the emotional life out of them. They say no to a life of struggle for a paycheck. I think part of our resistance to millennials has also to do with our resistance to change. The neurorelational framework embraces both and thinking. Yes, grit and resourcefulness are good things, but they are saying no to toxic stress. They are saying yes to a life that is more fulfilling, a life of following their bliss, a life that is gentler and kinder to their nervous systems. And I think that we can all benefit from following their light.
I've been guilty of that with my son because, I didn't know if he was going to walk. I didn't know if he was going to talk.
Yeah.
It took him 10 months to hold his head up. So there was a big portion of time where the struggle made me uncomfortable. Like when he was
Yeah.
trying to do something and I could see him struggling, that I would swoop in and do it for him. And I will say, my husband was the other way. And he's like, no,
Mm.
you let him army crawl to this, or you let him do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is a balance
Right.
because you don't want, I didn't want him to struggle to the point of such frustration that it was defeating for him.
Exactly. Hmm.
So I would,
And you had a gut feeling that he had stress and that you needed to reduce that stress.
yeah. But
And
is that
absolutely.
something that moms innately, when you are a biological mom, innately
Yes.
just that's it's not going to go
Even
away?
even adoptive moms. So
Really, they get
yeah,
that.
they get
Okay.
it too. So what happens is when a child goes through the birth canal, the amygdala gets flooded with oxytocin, and that makes you want to protect your child from all harm. And it just a little bit of upset, you know, just really sets that amygdala off.
Yeah.
And then, but if you, so it happens going through the birth canal, but it also happens as you take care of an infant baby day in and day out. The same thing happens in the brain. So dads who take care of their babies, diaper change, feed, and all that, get it too. Dads who aren't hands-on with their kids don't get it.
Fascinating. So there's a balance there to be
Yeah.
learned of how, when it's appropriate to step in, when it's appropriate to encourage the struggle, the challenge.
Mhm.
Um, and
There,
I'll say, now I'm at a point where Ari can do a lot more things. I think developmentally,
mhm.
he's still delayed. And so problem solving is still, we're still working on that. And he gets really frustrated because he has low tone and his dexterity isn't where he wants it to be. He
Mm,
doesn't quite know that, but he's like frustrated.
right.
And so I can see that he's very quick always to ask for me to solve it and help him and do it. And I
Mm.
think up until just recently, I would oftentimes just swoop in.
Yeah.
Now that he's older and a bit stronger and a bit more mentally capable, I can push it out a little bit more and like, okay, you try it first,
Yeah.
or
Good.
let's do it together. And so
Hmm. Nice.
I can recognize that in myself.
Hmm.
So that's good. um, but clearly more work to be done. But that kind of then goes back to my last question,
Oh,
which
good.
my second question was, well, what if a parent doesn't refuses to um or is unwilling to accept where their child is developmentally?
That's hard. And it's hard for all parents. It's usually hardest for dads.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, it is. That is just really hard. And it's a grieving process that often men try to avoid. They don't think of grieving as, they don't want to be weak.
Right.
And
Well,
grieving,
they don't want their kids. They don't want to perceive their kids as incapable or less than.
yeah, right. But they also have to grieve the child that they thought they were going to get. And so what you can do is do that for them. And it's the same with kids. Like children often avoid the feelings of disappointment and go straight to anger because their parents have taught them that disappointment isn't safe by trying to constantly either, if they get disappointed at very young ages, they try to distract them from it or cheer them up or talk them out of that feeling. And so they kind of learn that's not an okay feeling to have. So they just go straight to anger often.
So example, you're disappointed that you don't get to play with this toy right now because it's bedtime or it's
You could, but that's very verbal, and
uh,
expressing disappointment non-verbally goes in better. It's more of a felt experience. So you can just go, oh, you can't have the toy.
that's that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And you just show it to them. And so the same thing for dads. Like, yeah, he really wished that he could, he was at that level. It's really kind of a bummer that he's not. And that can get a real feeling out of them.
Yeah.
a sadness. And so they don't have to express it. You can express that for them and they get the same benefit.
So there's just so much power in saying the truth, saying what is.
Really, yeah, that's such a great, I love that way of just articulating it. Yeah, just saying what is,
When I
not
was in,
resisting reality.
yeah, let
Just,
somebody else say the truth, and maybe you
mhm,
don't have to hear it, say it, but you could feel it and you can
mhm.
acknowledge it in your own way. Yeah, when I was in coaching school, I mean, that's what they said. Just
Oh,
say what it is. You're the sounding board. Say what is.
yeah.
Put it out there.
Mhm.
And it can land or it cannot, right? Because I
Right,
don't have an agenda.
right.
Interesting.
Mhm.